Hello, Game Boys and Game Girls. I'm the Game Boy Guru, and welcome to episode 2 of Cleaning Carts. Once again, my vlog series where I just kind of talk about some various gaming subjects and industry-related stuff while cleaning some of my carts. So today I thought I'd delve into something that I don't think gets discussed as much as maybe it should. And that is least favorite game genres. Now specifically I'm going to cover some of mine and then talk about that a little bit, but I'd like to hear from all of you what your least favorite genre or genres are and why. First game we're going to clean is Dexterity on the Game Boy. And just to give you a few examples of some of the game genres that I find to be the least enjoyable of them all. Just a few examples. One of them is what I'll call life simulators. I know some places refer to these as slice of life games. And this is things like Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing. Now, to be fair, I actually put a lot of time into the original Animal Crossing and rather enjoyed it, but I haven't really enjoyed or put much time into the follow-ups. Some of that may be because the original came to me at the right time in my life when it was just something that was fun to play. But anymore, it's just not a genre that I care to really invest any time into. And so that's a good example of one. Again, I have good, fond memories of playing the original Animal Crossing, but I've never been able to get into the Harvest Moon games or, really get excited about any of that stuff. And, when I bought the Wii Animal Crossing game, what is it called? City Folk, I think. I messed around with it for a little bit, but it just didn't do anything for me. For me, it felt like more of the same, but not enough new features, content, or whatever to really be worth putting much time into, and I quickly went back to other things. Specifically at that time, I probably went back to Mario Kart Wii because I was having a lot of more fun with that. Other genres that I don't care for very much would be sports games, and I'll qualify that by saying, generally speaking, serious sports games. A lot of fun can be had with some of the more arcadey, non-serious sports games. I've always enjoyed Arch Rivals, for example, or the Mario line of sports games is generally fun. But on the whole, sports games are not something that I generally want to invest a whole lot of time into, because it's just not something that I want to play. I'm not that much of a sports fan. I enjoy college football, for example, but otherwise, I don't make or take much time in my life for anything sports related, other than, I listen to the college football game on the radio, that kind of thing, and when my parents talk to me about the volleyball team, for example, the college volleyball team, and how well they're doing, I'll discuss that with them, but I'm not going out of my way to do much sports-related stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and certainly there's nothing wrong with sports games, because a lot of people come to the genre, or to video gaming in general, because of sports games. And that's a good thing, It's just not for me. Another example of a genre that I just don't care for very much would be this kind of new batch of online-only shoot-'em-ups or shooter games. Not shoot-'em-ups, I'll say, like first-person and third-person shooter, battle royale style games, PUBG, Fortnite, Overwatch, third and first person big arena shooters, or even just online multiplayer shooter matches with Call of Duty and stuff like that. I don't care about any of that stuff. Now, that's not to say that those games can't be fun and that, the people who are playing those games aren't having fun. Most likely they are, and they're getting a lot of enjoyment out of it. But I see those experiences primarily as ephemeral, and while the experiences themselves are fine, once those games go offline, it's not something you can ever go back to. And so, from my perspective, I guess, I see that as a weakness of the game, and something that it's difficult to justify putting a lot of time into something that, if you ever get the hankering to do it again 2 years from now, 5 years from now, when servers are offline, you might be out of luck. So I just don't have any desire to invest time into that stuff. Next up is the Ren and Stimpy Show Vidiots on Game Boy. Another good example is card or poker games. And I won't include card battle games because I haven't really messed with the genre yet. I don't see myself becoming a big fan of those, but you never know. But, things like the World Poker Tournament, or just standard kind of poker and blackjack games and things of that nature, that's not something that I have ever really had much desire to play. I've done a little bit of that, and of course I'll be exploring some of that with the Game Boy library as I go through and do more reviews. But ultimately, I don't even really play those kinds of games in real life. I remember playing poker with some friends in high school, penny poker and stuff like that, and we didn't really understand the rules all that well. And so we just sort of played it as a good reason to hang out and do something other than playing video games, or possibly getting ourselves into trouble. So for me, card games, poker games, etc., those are the kinds of things I'd rather sit down and play with a real deck of cards and people at the table, versus just playing a video game version, because ultimately I think the real experience is where it's at for that kind of a thing. Another genre that I'm less a fan of would be racing games. Now, it's not because I don't think racing games are good, because I do, and there are a lot of really good racing games, and I've enjoyed a number of racing games. Part of it is that I'm terrible at racing games. I'm absolutely terrible at racing games. And so, for me, it's difficult to derive much enjoyment out of them when race after race after race, no matter how hard I try, I just don't see any progress, or I don't make much of a dent in my time. And I'm one of those people that you'll see me playing a racing game at an arcade, and I'm the guy who is constantly running into the walls and almost crashing my car every 5 seconds and that sort of thing. So, not my strongest genre. I appreciate the genre and what it is and what it's trying to do, but for me, it's just not something that I've been able to derive a lot of enjoyment from, because I just haven't been able to develop a skill level for it, and that's just part of the nature of it. Next up is Incredible Crash Dummies on Game Boy, and finally, I haven't delved into this genre a lot, so I can't say that my mind won't change on this. But right now, one of my least favorite genres would have to be visual novels. And again, it's just one of those things where, for me, I got to have gameplay. I've got to have some kind of experience that that really makes playing that game something that I want to go back to, or something that I'm going to enjoy over the course of time. With a visual novel, it's really, for a lot of them, at least the ones that I've played, it's a lot about a guessing game, trying to figure out and read the situation and understand the story and the characters, so that for the few choices that you have in terms of how to progress the game, that you just read the characters and try to figure out what you're doing. Now, if a visual novel legitimately has multiple endings and has different things that you can do in order to advance the story, and has wildly different outcomes that you can have within the game, well, that's a neat feature, and that's something that would make me more apt to play a game like that, especially multiple times. But for now, it's just not something that, not a genre that I particularly have a desire to put a lot of time into. Again, I could be proven wrong in the future. I may end up playing a visual novel at some point that really blows me away with story and character. But I don't know. It's not something that I really see myself going back to or wanting to put a lot of time into. You know, for me, maybe the primary reason to start playing visual novels would be, and I've got a couple of them, but to start checking boxes off my list, so to speak, or eliminating games from my backlog. So that's one reason to do it. I mean, if you want to go through a visual novel that's only going to take you a scant few hours to kind of play through, well, that makes sense. Maybe it's something that that I can pick up and play over a weekend and knock something out and feel at least marginally accomplished that I finished a game. But other than that, it's not something I see myself investing a lot of time into. So, of those examples, which of those would I feel is my least favorite genre overall? And right now, I'd have to say it's kind of a toss-up. Again, visual novels, not something that I see myself going back to. Card and poker style games, gambling games, it's not something I really do in real life. I would rather do that in real life than play a video game version of it. But again, it's not something that I have much desire to invest time into. Oh, by the way, this is Game & Watch Gallery. And then of course, sports games. I've had some fun with sports games, and there are sports games that I genuinely enjoy. I've probably mentioned it on the channel before, but Bill Walsh College Football, when I was in high school, that was one that my best friend and I played, and we really got a kick out of that. I had him over, and we rented that for the Genesis, and we really had a good time with that. And of course, he stomped me into the ground because he had played Tecmo Bowl and some of these other games, Madden and what have you, and so he was much more familiar with that stuff than I was, not only of sports in general, but of the kind of the general flow and the way you play those kinds of games. But it was still fun, and so I don't know. It's difficult to pick what I would see as my least favorite. I think if I had to pick one right now as my objective least favorite genre, it would probably have to be card games and poker games. at least with a visual novel, you have a story and you have characters, and it's something that they can develop that, and you can be convinced to care about those characters. With sports games, of course, there are cool mechanics that you can learn, and there's usually a wide variety of strategies and plays and different things to execute, and various teams and modes that you can try out. You can practice, and you can do a season or like a whole career mode in some cases. And so for a lot of those kinds of things, there's a lot more longevity and playability in the long term. But card and poker games, while there's some of that, because again you're learning the mechanics and the rule sets and strategies of various different card games, I have no interest in playing those kinds of games, really, even in real life. If I was going to do it, I would play those kinds of games with other people, most likely with knowledgeable people that understood those games, so I could better learn the rules and understand what it was I was doing. But ultimately, it's not something that I have any interest in or any desire to really pursue. We've got F-14 Dogfight Simulator Turn and Burn. So I'm really curious to hear from all of you what you believe your least favorite genre to be, and maybe some of your kind of honorable mention or runner-up least favorites, and why. What is it about those genres that either doesn't excite you, or turns you off, so to speak? What about a genre that you don't like just kind of puts you off? For me, like I said, life simulators, for me, with those kinds of games, a lot of it is they're very repetitious, but not in a fun and engaging way for me. I know for other people they are. Other people love to go in and play Animal Crossing and shake trees and pull weeds and do things like that. But at some point, I just kind of tune out and stop caring about that stuff. Sports games. Again, I'm not that well versed or well educated on sports. So a lot of times, the rules of the actual sports themselves sometimes elude me, and so sometimes when I get penalized for something, it's oftentimes a combination of the fact that I don't even understand the rules of the sport, and I'm also struggling with the controls or understanding the mechanics of the game and how that applies to the rules of the sport itself. Racing games, again, I'm just terrible at them. And I've never been able to develop a skill level where I feel comfortable and confident playing and feeling like I'm actually gonna do something to progress. And so the last related topic with that I'd like to, I guess, discuss is for a genre of games that you don't like, do you feel like you're missing out because you're not into those games, or because you're not invested in a genre like that? Here we've got WWF Raw for Game Boy. And that's a little bit harder question. Forgot to remove the label off the back of this one. That's a harder question to answer, because at some level, I immediately want to say no, I'm not missing out. Now, obviously, with any genre of game, even a genre that you don't like and don't think you're ever going to like, there are going to be games that are the absolute pinnacle of excellence within that genre. And so while you may be missing out on what is considered the top game of a genre, if it's not a genre that interests you, is it something that you're truly missing out on? Or is it just a case of it's just not for you? And I struggle with this because there are people who I've spoken to who they're not into a particular game or they're not into a particular genre. And for me, because I'm so into that game or I'm so into that genre, it's difficult for me to see that someone else isn't and has no interest in that. Or on the flip side, people that are into genres of games that I'm not, and they're so into it that they have a hard time seeing why I'm not into that, or not understanding why that just doesn't do anything for me, or why I don't get excited about it. And I think I think that's one of the things that probably makes it difficult to be a game journalist or a reviewer, because there are so many genres that people just may not be into, and so it's harder for them to review something, because they kind of have to detach themselves emotionally from the experience and talk strictly about mechanics and gameplay and graphics and sound and all that. And so it's much more clinical in that sense. This is a good example. Wrestling. I was never into wrestling. It's a sports game, and so it's not something that I see myself putting a lot of time into. But at some point, I'm going to have to play and review this game because I'm committed to going through the whole library. So I'm going to have to try and look at it from as objective a perspective as I can. But if you're just playing games for fun, I think there's a case to be made that you're missing out ever so slightly, because it's possible that you'll discover a game that will change your mind about a particular genre. It's also possible that you're missing out on something that, especially for a multiplayer game, that may connect you to other people that you end up becoming friends with, or that you find you have common ground with that maybe otherwise you didn't. And so there's a case to be made for that. But I think on the whole, I'm going to say no, I'm not missing out. This is Tecmo Bowl on Game Boy, of course. I'm going to say no, I'm not missing out. There are still games, examples within those genres that I would like to try at some point, because either they're really well loved and well regarded games, or they're games that I own because I've picked them up cheap somewhere along the way, and I'd still like to try them, even if it's not a genre that I particularly care about or I'm any good at. Racing games are a good example. It's one of those that I don't see myself putting a lot of time into something, but when you buy a game for $2 at Goodwill and it's extremely well regarded and well loved, it's probably worth putting 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes into to see if it's something that clicks with you. So, for me, on the whole, I don't think I'm missing out by skipping over some of the games and the genres that have just never clicked with me so far. That's not to say they couldn't or that they won't in the future, but for now, I think it's better for me to concentrate on the genres that I know I enjoy, so that I can play through the large backlog of games I have that I'm more likely to get a lot of entertainment value out of and fun factor from, versus just trying to play games because everybody says it's good, even if it's not something that I've ever liked in the past. And so I don't see the point in doing that. I just don't see the point in feeling as though I'm missing something by skipping out on games that are just not something that I've ever had much interest in. And that's where I stand. But I'm curious as to what everyone thinks. So let me know in the comments down below. What are some of your least favorite genres in gaming? What are the games or examples of why those things are your least favorites? And then, do you think you're missing out? Is there a game or a genre that you're just not a fan of, but all your friends love it, and it's a way that you think you might be able to connect with them further or deepen your relationship, but you just can't bring yourself to do it? And so do you feel like you're missing out, or like there's something that you're just not getting? Let me know. I'm curious to hear what everyone thinks. That's all I have for you today. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at GameBoyGuru. I'll have a link in the description below to my blog where you can read all my Game Boy game reviews. That is GameBoyGuru.blogspot.com. Also, make sure you check out Nira and his channel. He provided the Super Mario Land overworld music that I use as the intro music for all my videos, and he's got a bunch of other great chiptune and game music covers as well, so make sure you go check that out. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up and let me know you want more content like this, and also consider subscribing so you can see more of my videos in your YouTube feed. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for playing, and game on.